Well, shalom, shalom. I just want to welcome everyone to the new moon conference call. This is the first day of the 8th month, and we're in the year 2019. This is Barbara, and I'm serving as your host today. And we just want to welcome all our family and friends that are here with us on the phone and on the internet. And maybe you will be listening to the recording. We want to welcome you. And we welcome you to go to the website to find out more about the Creator's calendar. It's Lunar, Sabbathday.com. There are a lot of articles, there's videos, and on the bottom of the events page, you can scroll down and see the dates that we're meeting, the phone numbers, and internet connection to join us. We would love to have you come and join us. Now today, our discussion is about the original timekeeping system is going to be with Brother Joseph, and he has agreed to come back and do another presentation about the timekeeping system that's in the heavens. And the title for his talk today, Brother Joseph, are you there? I'll let you announce your title.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Really good.
Good. I can speak louder, but sometimes if I speak too loud, then it reverberates. Yeah, the announcement that you put on the call this morning was 7 words that determine your final destiny. And by the word, that's a total of 7 words in itself. 7 words that determine your final destiny. Before I go any further, I would like to make a disclaimer in that I do not consider myself a final authority on anything or anybody. I'm in the learning process, and I've been doing that for almost 87 years. And I've learned that the older I get, the more I realize that I can and still could learn, which is another 7 words. You don't know what you don't know yet. I also would like to share the thought that I desire audience participation. I'm sure different ones will have different questions they'll have in their minds, and I would like you to write those down on a piece of paper so that it may be that during the discussion that I will answer some of those, and so write down and see which questions you have, and if I haven't answered them, we can have a question and answer period afterwards, if that's okay with Barbara.
Yes, that's wonderful.
So save your questions to the end, and I would really like to see some of the men jump in and to express their thoughts and things they've learned. Also, I consider myself to be in a learning mode. You know, when children are young and they're first starting to learn to walk, they will finally pull themselves up beside a couch or a chair or something, and then they'll step out away from that, and they may be able to take 1 or 2 or 3 steps, and then they may fall down. And what we need to do as loving, kind parents is to encourage them and tell them, oh, you're doing so good. Let's get up and let's try it again. And maybe you can get another extra step next time. We do not condemn because they made a mistake. And I think that's the way our Heavenly Father looks at us as we are learning His new way to keep track of our time and our days appointed for worship for Him. So let's be patient and kind with each other. Let's make allowance for those that are learning that may be on a different day than we are. We're all in a learning process, and I'm going to share with you some of the things that I've learned and stumbled into in the past few years, and I certainly wasn't interested in, neither was I wanting to have anything change from what I grew up in. I grew up in a religious environment where you didn't dare ask any questions different than what you had been told so far. And so it was quite a experience for me to be able to look outside of the fence that I grew up in. Let me say this. If you allow anyone, including yourself, to fence you in, you have successfully succeeded in fencing out the entire rest of the world, except with what little you fence in. So keep a sharp pair of fence cutters in your back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the answer to the 7 words that determine your final destiny are these. Number 1, who. Number 2, or. Number 3, what. Number 4, is. Number 5, your. Number 6, final. Number 7, authority. Who or what is your final authority? About 55 or 60 years ago, I stumbled into a man who was several decades my senior, and he gave me a very good piece of advice that's been very helpful for me down through the years. He says, Joseph, when someone brings up a new topic that you don't know anything about or know very little about, and they feel like they know enough they want to share and inform you of what they know, you need to stop and do one thing, and that is find out who or what is their final authority. And if your final authority is the same as theirs, then bless them and continue the conversation. If not, put your arm on their shoulder, thank them, and change the subject. So today, figure out what or who is your final authority. What I'm going to share is some of the things that I've observed down through the years, and it may be that there are folks who have observed more accurately than I have. I'm certainly open to learn. But several years ago, when I was at a Feast of Tabernacles, meeting up here in the Panhandle of Idaho, I arrived on the day that was announced by a local mailing that was given out, and I got there at the end of that day, and when they had the evening meeting there, I noticed that it seemed to me that the full moon was up a lot higher in the sky than what I thought it should be, because my understanding was that the full moon would come up just about the time that the sun is setting for the full moon on the 15th day of the lunar calendar reckoning. And he says, Joseph, that's interesting that you noticed that. And he told me, he said, I got my sukkah set up last night. He said, we came a day earlier than the rest of them. And I said, well, that's interesting. And he said, by the way, he said, why don't you come over in the morning and have breakfast with myself and my wife? And I said, yeah, that'd be nice. And so when I got over there, he shared with me his observation of what he had been observing for several years. He lived in a cabin up in the western side of Montana, and he had 2 trees that were outside of his front door in his cabin, 2 evergreen trees, and what he had noticed over a period of years was that the crescent setting moon 1 month before Tabernacles the crescent moon would be to the left side of the first tree, which would be to the south. Then a month later, which would be the 2 weeks announcement before the full moon of Tabernacles, the crescent moon would be right between those two trees. The following month, the setting crescent moon, 2 weeks before the full moon, would be to the right of the second tree. And so he realized that the setting crescent moon moves each month, month by month, and after watching it for a few years, he decided and realized that the setting crescent moon in the western horizon sets approximately 10 degrees different. From spring Passover, it will be right 2 weeks before the full moon of Passover. The setting crescent moon will be setting very close to, if not right on, 270 degrees on the compass. 270 degrees on the compass is due west, opposite of 90 degrees, which would be due east. Now, 2 weeks later, the full rising full moon would come up exactly at 90 degrees to the east. And that happens only 2 nights a year. 90 degrees east, rising full moon at Passover and also at Tabernacles. The month before and the month after, it will be 10 degrees off. It'll be 10 degrees different. So, from Passover in the springtime, the setting crescent moon will be on the western horizon, 10 degrees further north for 3 consecutive months until summer solstice. The first month after the setting crescent moon for Passover will be at 280, and the next month it will be at 290, and then the third month it will be at 300 degrees. And then it turns and comes back 10 degrees each month. So 6 months from Passover, 6 months later, the setting crescent moon will be setting back down there at 270. So the importance of that, in my mind, is you can tell what month of the lunar timekeeping you're in by the position of the setting crescent moon 2 weeks before the full moon for each month of those 6 months. And so if you happen to be off by 1 month, when you start your count, you can see that you are off by 1 month and you can correct that. And I thought that was rather interesting. Now let me look here on my notes and see if there's something else that I need to mention. Well, we need to prove all things. We're told to do that in the Scriptures. To show ourselves approved. And so I'm presuming that most of the folks on this call, like myself, feel that the Scriptures are our final authority. So, in the Scriptures, there are places that it mentions, like in Psalms 104:19, that He has appointed the moon for seasons. And there are other verses, and I don't know the address of all of them, but I think there's one in Exodus 34, probably verse 22, that talks about the end of the year. And then it speaks about there is no voice nor language where their voice is not heard. I believe that's in Psalm somewhere. Well, when you're learning a language, you're not going to get it overnight. It's going to take some time and effort. And so that sort of hints at the fact that we may need to give some thought and time and study to figuring this out. Well, I've had friends ask me, Joseph, how do you know when the night of the full moon is in order to keep the Passover and tabernacles? And I didn't know. So I started thinking about it and looking around, asking questions. And this is what I came up with. I found accidentally on my own. There are 3 or 4 nights in a row where the rising moon will seem to be full. A couple of nights before it is actually the full rising moon on the eastern horizon at 90 degrees on the compass on Passover and Tabernacles, it will look almost full. But a couple of nights before the actual full moon, the moon will be up in the sky approximately what I call 1 hand width. Now the Indians didn't have clocks like we have, quartz watch to keep track of time accurately to the very second. They had to go by generalities, and so this seems to work out well. Even a small child or a big 6'6" man, if you will face the south, hold your left arm out horizontal to the ground, and bend your wrist so that your 4 fingers are parallel. The 4 fingers will approximate 1 hour for each hand width that the moon is in the sky. So if the moon looks full and it's up in the sky about 2 hand widths from the horizon, then you know that it's 2 nights before the actual full moon. Now, if you don't live where it's flat, like out in Nebraska, you have to compensate for the mountains that might be on either side or the hills. Where I'm at here in Idaho, I have to compensate for that because I've got mountains to the east and I've got mountains to the west, but I'm up on the side of the mountain on the west side approximately as high as the mountains are on the east, so it pretty well is equal to whereas if I was on the flat. So the night before the full moon, the rising full moon will look almost full, and it will be in the sky approximately 1 hand width before the sun actually sets. Now the night of the full moon will come up on the eastern horizon, the Passover and Tabernacles at 90 degrees in the compass, within 5 or 10 minutes, one side or the other of when the sun sets, and that way you can tell when it actually is the actual full moon. If you didn't know that, you might miss it by a night either way. The night after the full moon, you can double check your finding because the moon will not break the eastern horizon for approximately an hour after the sun sets. So you can tell the exact night of the full moon pretty well. And even on a cloudy night, you can tell pretty much because the full moon is bright enough that you can see it through the clouds. That was a big help for me. Now let me look at my notes again because I've been talking here basically with my eyes closed because I can think better with the eyes closed. Okay, we went over who or what we accept as our final authority, the Scriptures. Here's another thing. In the Scriptures, we're told we need 2 or 3 witnesses to establish anything. Well, our Heavenly Father has been good to us to give us more than 1 witness. Now, at Passover, the Big Dipper, which is the big bear, which circles around the Little Dipper, which has the North Star as the end of its handle, the Big Dipper will be actually with the handle standing absolutely perfectly up and down, perfectly perpendicular to the horizon for 15 or 20 minutes, just as it gets dark enough to see the stars at Passover in the spring. A few nights or a week or so afterwards, it will not be perfectly perpendicular, vertical to the earth, because it keeps moving. Now, there is another thing that happens in the spring, and that is the constellation called the Hunter, which has in it the belt with the dagger below the square that's made by 4 stars, that like a square box, only the box is standing on one point, and I believe it's the middle star in that dagger that's Orion. Now that dagger constellation of those stars below that square, and the constellation of the Hunter will be just like the handle of the Big Dipper, which is in the north sky. At the same time, this dagger in the southern sky will be vertical. It'll be perpendicular to the earth for about 15 or 20 minutes, because all the constellations are gradually circling around the North Star. So they are turning, the Big Dipper, I believe, is turning counterclockwise. Now at Tabernacles, instead of the Big Dipper handle being vertical, where it would be pouring the liquid out of the Big Dipper, at Tabernacles 6 months later, the Big Dipper will be in the horizontal position to catch the fall harvest. Also, what is of interest is the setting crescent moon at sundown or sunset will gradually change from the bowl position that it is in at Passover, where it would be, the way I remember it, is catching the blood from the sacrifice. And then at the fall tabernacles, the crescent moon 2 weeks before full moon at tabernacles on the western horizon will be tipped up to where it's pouring out the fall harvest, and the Big Dipper is horizontal to catch the fall harvest. So that's the way I remember that. So we get a double witness that way. When I was down in Arizona several years ago, I had the advantage of having clear skies most of the time. And so I was able to watch the rising full moon and the rising, excuse me, I had a call coming in. I can talk that later. In Arizona, most of the fences have been built decades and decades and decades ago, and they laid those out east and west as best they could with their compasses. And I had the opportunity of being able to stand in a gateway that was on a fence that was east and west, and the full moon at Passover would come right exactly up on the east end of that fence. And the next morning, approximately an hour after the sun had risen, the setting full moon would be right on the west end of that fence. And it only does that twice a year. It's what they call opposition, if I remember right. And so that's another double check witness. Now, the sun also, what I can remember, what I observed, the sun will come up exactly at 90 degrees to the east on the morning of the evening that the full moon will come up to announce Passover and Tabernacles. So the sun also follows that 90 degrees to the due east. So, are there any questions? I'm not sure I covered all my notes, but that'll give you something to work on. Back to you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm waiting for questions or just comments.
I'm looking over my notes here to see if there's anything that I jotted down that maybe I accidentally skipped.
I think it's very interesting, and I did have up on the screen a chart, moonrise and moonset, and I did look it up for fall, for September, and I remembered that you said before when you talked that the rising and setting time would be really close.
Yes,
so
the full moon.
Within a few minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, the full moon, only 2 times a year, will come up on the eastern horizon, very close to 90 degrees. Sometimes it'll vary a degree or two, and of course we know that the magnetic north is flopping around some too, so we have to consider that. But the full moon will rise within 10 minutes, more or less, of when the sun sets. Sometimes it'll be a little before the sun actually goes below the horizon. That's if you're on flat country. But twice a year, the full rising moon will rise at 90 degrees and will set the next morning at 2:70, approximately an hour or less after the sun has come up. It only does that twice a year.
Okay, well, on this chart I've got September 16th, the moon set at 9:04 a.m. and it rose at 9:09 p.m. That's only 5 minutes apart from being...
Yeah, you can actually, sisters and brothers, you can actually tell by looking at the Farmer's Almanac when the day is, it gives the length of the day, and it'll be within just a few minutes of 12 hours at the equinox. Of course, in the summer solstice, it'll be a lot longer. But we have those things, but eventually, we may not have that. We may not have access to the internet. We may not have access to the Naval Observatory and those things. So, we need to be able to tell by looking. Oh, I just remembered something that I wanted to share and I forgot to mention.
Okay, good.
That people, years ago, I didn't have any idea about all these things in connection with the moon, but the setting moon gradually sets, that's the wrong word. The setting moon will, as it's going down, will be approximately 1 hand width higher in the western sky for each night after the crescent moon. So 7 days or 7 evenings after the crescent moon, the half moon will be almost straight overhead at sundown. It progresses towards the eastern horizon, approximately 1 hand width, or in increments of 7 to the straight overhead, and then another 7 to where it is full moon when it comes up at sundown. So it divides it into 14 equal parts, and if you look at your hand, you can pretty well tell where you're at in case you're off one day, you can tell by looking at where the moon is in reference to the horizon, compensating, of course, for any hills or mountains. Now, after the full moon, then, of course, the moon is out of sight, and it will be showing in the morning. And I know that the last week before the new moon, the crescent moon will be in the sky, in the darkness, closer and closer to the eastern horizon as it gets closer and closer to the change of the moon. I'm forgetting what the name of that is in the almanac, but we got lots to learn. I don't claim to be authority. I can learn from anybody. How I learned some of this was just being open to listen to someone that knew more about than I did.
I find it very interesting, and I would like to learn more about the phases. We had a lady here for Tabernacles that went out and observed, and she said, find a spot and look every time at that same place and learn where the moon is rising and setting and keep track of it.
Yeah.
That way. So that will really help. And like you said, the man that you talked to had 2 trees that were the same, always,
yeah, well, now.
And then he observed the crescent through that, the 10-degree different every month.
Now, what I've been noticing, that I've been here for about 6 or 7 years in the building I'm in now, and it has a deck on the second floor. And if I stand with my back against the outside of the building on the next to the last 2x12 that sticks out from the building and supports that deck, there is a tree. It's a younger evergreen tree that's growing between 2 great big tall ones that are about 100 feet high. But the very tip of that evergreen tree that's only about 20 feet high is precisely, exactly at 90 degrees. So I can tell by watching how close the rising sun is to that tree each morning, how close it's getting to Passover and or Tabernacles. And it's very close to it. And I'm thinking it's going to be right on in a couple of weeks here or less. And so I'm anxiously watching that. If you don't move around like I've done most of my life, you can pick out something and you can make sure that you've got things lined up exactly with where the degrees on the compass is. When I was there in Arizona, I drove a 2-inch round piece of a limb from a tree down in the ground to where it was just about level with the surface of the ground, and this was on the flat desert floor there. And I took a pointed hoe and I marked off the 90 degrees and the 270, which is east and west, and then the 180 to the south. And I could tell by watching where the moon came up and where it set, where the sun came up and where it set. And I could tell with almost within a day, without even looking at the calendar, when it was exactly where it was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. I think I hear someone. Does someone have a question or comment? Well, I know I have been kind of lazy about going out and looking all the time because I know I have it on the computer. And I do have a pretty good sky here where I am right now in the north to see the moon going up and down and when it's setting and rising. And I've learned a lot since I've been on this journey about the lunar Sabbath. But I have a lot more to learn.
Yeah, we all do. One thing I've noticed also is that in the summertime, say at the summer, not the equinox, the summer solstice, that the moon will be at its lowest arc in the southern sky, exactly opposite of what the sun is doing. And then as it gets towards winter, the moon rises and circles across the sky higher and higher to straight overhead in the middle of the winter. And so that gives us more light at night, especially on the nights before and after full moon. And so I thought that was interesting. So we get the extra light from the moon in the wintertime when the sun is running lower in the horizon.
Okay, that is interesting.
Now that's something that I just noticed by observing.
Well, does anybody have a comment or a question? I really appreciate you coming on, Brother Joseph, and sharing again, because I know you shared a few months ago with us, and I wrote a whole bunch of notes that day, and I was sorry that I couldn't get it recorded because many people will want to learn more about the degrees and how to watch for, I know to watch for the Passover moon, it's going to be bowl-shaped, and we did see a bowl-shaped in March, and it was it was bowl-shaped to hold a little bit of milk, that little crescent after the new moon. So
yeah, well now here's something else. Here's something else that I think I forgot. The setting crescent moon, which is 2 weeks before each full moon, will be consistently, gradually, the 2 points of the crescent will be gradually twisting counterclockwise so that at Passover, the crescent moon, the 2 points of the bowl are pretty much at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. And
yes.
each month, in the next 6 months, will gradually twist counterclockwise to where the right-hand point is higher. And if you divide the 9 and the 3 o'clock position at Passover to where it's at 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock at Tabernacles, it takes 6 months for it to move approximately 15 minutes on the clock. So it's 2.5 minutes per month, more or less, and that gives you a little thing. We may come to the time we won't have the Gregorian calendars, we won't have access to anything except what we can see in the sky, and we're told to observe, to look, and to see, and to study. And so we're going to have to know this stuff without any other backup, and we've got to know the way they act, where they are, and all of that.
Yeah, and I like what you said about, its language goes forth, the Psalm scripture, and day after day utter speech, and its language goes forth because
it's a language, and we're not going to get it overnight.
It's learning a new language, and that is hard to do. And so that really is a challenge. We're learning a new language, and I never thought about it that way.
I had a friend that Go ahead, brother.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that was Psalms 19.
Thank you. I know. I should know that all the Psalms. Okay, Psalms 19. I'm in Psalms, I think. So let me see if I can get to it. Because it's so interesting to think about that we're learning. Here it is, Psalms 19:1 and 19:2. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. Well, you want to go ahead and read that, Brother Martin?
Oh, yes. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. You put a box up on there on me. There's some kind of box that jumped up.
Oh, I can't see it now.
Oh. I'll open my Bible. Here we go. I'll start over. And their expanses declaring the work of his hands. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their utterance to the end of the world. In them he has placed a tent for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber. It rejoices as a strong man to run its course. Its rising is from one end of the heavens, and its circuit to the other end of them, and there is nothing hidden from its heat. The law of the Lord is perfect, restoring the soul. I like how it says that right afterwards. You know, the law of the Lord right after it gets done saying that. I don't know how far you wanted me to read.
Well, that was great, yeah. So, any more comments about that, Brother Martin, or questions?
I'm all good. It's just, that was one of the ones that made me go, wow, you know, that's telling me there's something going on up there that's important.
Mm-hmm. You know, the heavens declare the glory of Yah, and the firmament showeth his handiwork, and day unto day utters speech, and night unto night shows knowledge. And so that is really good. And then there's no speech or language where it doesn't go forth throughout all the world. And then, like you said, Psalms 19:7, right after he talks about the heavens and everything up there, that's our timekeeping system, he says, the law of Yah is perfect, converting the soul. That really is amazing. I never noticed that.
Mm-hmm. Barbie, this is Ruth.
Hey, Ruth.
Barbie, reread chapter 19. Is that speaking about the moon or the sun?
Well, let's
all
see.
of
When we talk, yeah,
Both, I think.
Because verse 2 says, day to day pours forth speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. It goes on, their voice is heard, verse 4, their line has gone, their words to the end of the world. In them he set up a tent for the sun. And it goes on, it's rising, we're still focused on the sun. Its rising is from one end of the heavens, its circuit to the other end. I'm not saying it isn't the moon, it seems to be focusing on a tent for the sun, and I don't know, is the moon a tent for the sun, or are we talking perhaps about the canopy that some of us study?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it's saying, but...
Well, to me, it's showing the heavens. Remember, Genesis 1:1, the heavens and the earth were created. And the heavens is the moon and stars and the daytime sun.
Yes.
And it does say night unto night shows knowledge, so that would have to be talking about, well, we know Abraham knew the stars, and Adam and Eve, and that's where the whole plan of salvation is written up there in the sky at night. Night unto night shows knowledge, and there's no plan of salvation written in the day sky. The Mazarah, the stars. That's, to me, what I think it's saying.
Well, when I read also the second part of verse 6, it says, and naught is hidden from its heat. Normally we think of the sun as being the radiant of heat, but, you know, I'm looking at the word studies and making sure that we've got our thought focused on the proper subject. I didn't see it switching from sun to moon, but, you know, who am I?
Okay, well, thanks for your comment. That's interesting, because I never thought about it any differently, because to me, I'll go back there, it says, the heavens declare the glory of Yah, and then day unto day utters speech, and night unto night shows knowledge. So, like I just said, and I know you've done word studies and things, so when I see night unto night, I know there's no sun on that part. But,
Right. And then when you speak of the firmament, you know, it says he set them all in the firmament. And that would be part of his glory, you know, his handiwork, because he set them all in the firmament for us to use.
yeah, and a lot of us have seen the firmament as a tabernacle over us. We've been studying out of the box again. And do see maybe a tent or a tabernacle over our earth. So that's a whole other subject, and we'll just stick with the subject we're on right now. And any more questions? Thank you for looking that verse up, because I just couldn't remember where it was at.
Well, I noticed in there, too, it also says like a strong man to run a race. Now, the sun actually goes faster than the moon around its circuit, right? It doesn't it passes the moon.
Yeah, that's what we've
overtakes it.
Told. Yeah, it would be a race. Yeah, that's a good point. Let's see. I'm trying to find that. I've got too many pictures up here. We'll go back. Well, I thought it was interesting, too, on the Big Dipper. I've got a picture of the Big Dipper here, spring, winter, fall, and summer. But for the spring one, they don't show it vertical, which you said it was vertical only for like 15 minutes or an hour. It would be standing right straight up, and then
right, and that's only for that night. It'll be a little bit off the next night, and it'll be a little bit before the night before, so that you can tell exactly the night out. When the full moon, you get two witnesses. You get the full moon right when the sun sets, and you get the handle of the Big Dipper being vertical, and then, of course, you get the opposite of that. Well, at Tabernacles in the fall, the handle of and that's from the end star of the handle to where it joins the Dipper, because the handle is sort of arched.
Yeah.
But they do turn. They do turn, and you can see by watching the handle of the Big Dipper before Tabernacles and before Passover when it's getting real close, and that's another thing you can watch.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me, too.
Yeah, I didn't know I was watching.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I noticed the other night I was out looking up. Well, lately it's so cloudy around here. I got trees all the way around me. It's kind of difficult. But I was looking up at the Big Dipper, and I noticed it's a little bit to the north of where I'm at, almost. I don't know, like 1 or 2 o'clock above me or whatever, and a little bit to the west. So the Big Dipper looked like it was a little to the north and west of me. Not much, just a little.
Well, it's been shifting all over the place. I have a friend that's been watching this stuff for decades, and he says that the magnetic north and that Big Dipper is moving all around the place. And I know as a kid when I grew up in New Hampshire, the Big Dipper was way to the northern horizon, and now here in Idaho it's almost straight overhead at night, which is not what I grew up observing. So
right.
Then changes. The earth is wobbling.
Right.
It is,
yeah, you're a little bit north of what we are. I'm in central Michigan, so I think you're a little bit further north than the plane that I'm on. Not much, but
yeah. Well, the southern belly of Canada more or less follows the I don't know what they call latitude or longitude or latitude, but
yeah,
I live 30 miles south of the Canadian border in New Hampshire, and I'm about 30 or 40 miles south of the Canadian border here in Idaho, so it's about the same as far as the position. But the Big Dipper is short moved and changed. It's almost straight overhead now, where it used to be real close to the northern horizon. So we've got things changing.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard they even had to change the magnetic strips where the magnetic fields change on airports, where the numbers and the lineup of things have had to be changed because of the magnetic field changing. I don't have that documentation, but I heard that 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, I was listening to some YouTube the other day, and they give specific numbers. Each runway on a great big airport is labeled numerically according to the degrees that it is in relationship to true north, I think. I don't know the detail of that, but I was interested to see that they use that so that the airplanes can follow their compasses to know which runway to land on.
Right.
I've noticed that Northern Star don't seem to be as bright as it used to be. I have a hard time finding it sometimes.
Yeah. And the sun is getting pure white. It's so bright it almost hurts your eyes. When I was a kid, it was almost yellow. So it's going into a change.
It was a lot more yellow.
Yeah, it was yellow when I was
years behind you, but I remember the sun being yellow, and now it's mostly white. Yeah, that's different. That is weird.
The sun used to be yellow. I said moon. I meant sun.
I know what you meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have time for another question. If we don't have a question, I'll turn the recording off, and then maybe there's some of you that would like to wait for the recording to be off to ask questions. But is there another question right now?
This is Susan, and I'm grateful for this because I'm just learning this, and I, too, am on top of a mountain, a little Ozark mountain, but I have all the trees all around me, and it's a little difficult, but I plan to do this, and I would like to know what the recording number is going to be. Can you do that now, or do we have to wait? Because I've got notes, and I want to put it at the top of it.
What's the number that you want?
The recording number that this will be?
Oh, sorry. It's going to be number 316.
Okay, John 3:16. Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Very much, because I want to go over it and over it and over it and over it and learn it.
That's why I wanted to record it, because when he talked before, Brother Joseph, I wrote down a bunch of notes, but I thought, everybody needs to hear this, and we need to learn it, and we need to have it recorded. So thank you for coming back again, Brother Joseph, and sharing with us and taking time to be with us.
Thank you.
Well, I enjoyed sharing what I've learned, and I know I've got more to learn, but what I've learned, it seems to work pretty good. It's better if you have access to a flat horizon and don't have to compensate for the mountains, but we need to be studying, watching, and the Gregorian calendar we've got now is a fairly new thing. We were given this method of timekeeping back at the very beginning in Genesis, and so that should certainly have priority over anything that comes in new, just from its age.
I agree.
What is our authority? Our authority is the Scriptures. Yes.
It goes back to the 7 words. Who or what is your final authority? And if you're going to go by evolution and all this other stuff, why, you're going to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yep. But if you follow Yahweh, just straight from creation, I try to read that over almost every day just to ground myself, because that's where it was perfect. That's when it was perfect. That's when it was as designed. Yep, we wobble. The earth wobbles. Everything's wobbled, and everything's changing, but hallelujah. That means we're getting closer and closer and closer to the day when all things will change, because he will come, and evil will not raise up its nasty wicked head a second time. Hallelujah.
Yeah, hallelujah. And with that, I'm going to close the recording. Let's see if I can figure out how to do it here. Trying to figure it out. Well, I've got a whole new program here, and I'm trying to figure out, I saw here somewhere how to shut it off. Let's see, mute, share.
You'll get it. You're learning a new language there, too.
Yes, I am. It's really, well, let's see. I guess I saw it earlier how to shut the recording off. So please pardon me, everybody. Let's see. Here's share. And I had the recording somewhere. Oh, here. It was under more. Okay, I'm learning it.